4, 3.
Hi, I'm Peter Thomas.
And I'm Donna Thomas.
And we're here in Santa Cruz, and we're going to be making this video to tell you about the ergonomics of hand papermaking.
Or how to make paper without getting a sore back.
All right, folks, so let's roll into the dissertation.
Yeah. All right.
The ergonomics of hand papermaking, or how to make paper without getting a sore back. In 1988 to 92, Peter made several trips to Europe to visit old paper mills where paper was still being made by hand. His initial goal was to understand the exact motions that made up the vatman's shake. But it was not long before that goal expanded to include both documenting the equipment in the mills and interviewing retired hand papermakers. It seemed he was in the right place at the right time, for there was a wealth of information in these places and people which soon would be likely lost to the ravages of time. He made this video and handbook to honor their generosity and pass along some of this information they shared. He began wanting to learn how to do the vatman's shake, the exact method one should use to dip the mold in and out of the vat. But papermaking is a many-faceted process, and he soon came to understand that to master the shake, he would have to study and understand how all the processes involved were interrelated. The papermakers he met were not teachers. They had learned on the job from people who were not really interested in sharing their own hard-earned knowledge. It took some time, between stories of life in the mills, for us to turn out the real answers to the questions he would ask. Perhaps it took time for him to learn to ask the right questions.
Papermaking is easy with a small mold, say a 9 by 12 or under. Very little technique is required for a fun-filled day with wonderful and interesting results. But as the scale of the paper increases, the work becomes harder. Without caution and proper technique, it is easy for a papermaker to end their day with a sore body and uneven results in their finished paper. As I watched the master papermakers in traditional hand paper mills, or vat mills as I might call them, like the one at Lessebo in Sweden, I saw that the workers' motions were fluid and graceful. I saw that Western papermaking, when practiced by a master craftsman, was effortless, full of dance-like motions. I realized that many novices, or self-taught papermakers, work too hard and without sensitivity to the flow of the process. If there were any 10 commandments for papermaking, the first would be stay relaxed. In fact, the first thing that Cyril Finn, the papermaker from Wookey Hole, who taught me some of the most important things I learned, the first thing Cyril Finn said to me when he watched me make paper was, "Loosen up, man." What does this mean? If you find you have tension in any part of your body, in any muscle, let it go. If you ever get sore after a day of papermaking, you would probably profit by consulting with a physical therapist or taking some sort of yoga class. Before World War II, all of the papermakers I spoke with walked a lot, to work, to the pub, to town. Today we live comparably sedentary lives, so we need to exercise and warm up before beginning a physical workout like papermaking. I have several goals in doing my warm-up exercises. One is to pre-stretch my muscles so that they are ready for work. Another is to get rid of any tensions or knots in my legs, arms, shoulders, etc. So I will be standing evenly so that the wet sheet will be held level and drain on all sides. I also want to become aware of where I hold tension and practice letting it go so that letting go of tension becomes automatic and I don't have to think about it when I'm making my paper.
Here are his series of exercises that he uses to warm up.
My shoulders are lined with my hips and my feet. I do simple motions like a side-to-side twist or a side stretch. When doing these motions, remember, keep your knees bent. You can do a forward drop, always keeping your knees bent. Don't curl over and get up on your toes. Rather bend from your hips. The double elephant stretch. I love it. This is great, huh? Me and Jane Fonda. Okay. The fool's cap poses are these, where I stretch my feeling of stretching here. Just doing all these different things, getting the hands loose, because the wrists get a really lot of work for some people. Okay, there you go.
The vat mills were set up for maximum efficiency with 2 or 3 person teams.
The workers were never required to make odd gyrations or uncalculated motions. And I believe this was their secret to achieving effortless papermaking. As I observed and discussed the vatman shake with these older papermakers, I discovered there was no one right way to make paper. Every old papermaker I met at some point confided to me that some other papermaker, no names of course, didn't know a bit about how to make paper. They did it all wrong. But of course techniques had to be modified depending on the pulp and the equipment. Still, there are certain series of moves, certain series of motions which are common to all of the production hand paper makers I observed. 1, center yourself. Release all tensions. 2, don't clutch at the mold. Don't hold it tight. Just let it balance on your fingers. Get it in perfect balance. Your thumb is only there to hold the decal on when you dip in. 3, dip into the water only up to your knuckles. Then lift the front side of the mold up, keeping the back side still. The water wave will move across the mold, so then flip the back side back. As I begin to flip the back side back, that's the time to begin the side-to-side rocking motions. The side-to-side rocking motions are not shimmying, but rather a gentle pivot from the center. The water wave will then be moving towards me. To stop so it doesn't splash me, I flip it back again. When it gets to the end, I throw the extra amount off. The extra amount I throw off is how I control the thickness of the sheet. This goes very quickly. And then finally I set the sheet. The setting motions are up and down until the sheet takes on a nice damp look. It's not wet, it's sort of a glassy sheen. And the sheet is ready to couch.
7, make sure your knees are not locked. Do small bounces. 8, begin an up and down motion to set the sheet. The more motion, the more the sheet will be compacted. Continue until the water leaves the sheet and the paper takes on a dull sheen rather than a wet look. Keep your body moving so you don't lock up any joints. Cyril told Peter they gave 3 bounces for a parchment paper and 7 to 10 for a banknote. This is where the skill of the beater man is noticed. Does the pulp drain at the perfect rate so that the paper maker has sufficient time to do his shake, but also does not have to hold the mold suspended, waiting for it to drain for any longer than is necessary? Peter likewise found there was a series of common motions used by the couchers.
1. Grasp the mold lengthwise. Hold it by your forefingers, dangling downwards. Use your thumb to direct it. 2. Align it with some sort of marks so that each sheet ends up aligning exactly with the one under it. 3. Rest the lower edge of the mold on the felt. Bend at your waist. Don't curve your back. 4. Rock the mold from the right edge to the left edge, applying firm downward pressure using the weight of your body. 5. Allow the mold to roll off of the post in a continuous motion. 6. Return the mold to the vat. If you are both papermaker and coucher, remember, don't twist your body, move your feet.
At some point, Peter realized that everything these old papermakers did had a good reason. It became evident that having the proper equipment was part of the secret to painless papermaking.
Following is a list of my thoughts on equipment and how they relate to the ergonomics of papermaking. 1. When making paper in a vat mill, the pulp needs to stay on the screen for 3 to 5 seconds. Having a beater and knowing how to use it, the beater man could produce pulp that drained at the proper speed. The vat had temperature regulators, so if the pulp was a little slow draining, they could turn up the heat and speed up the drainage. Of course, they could do just the opposite, cooling it down. The net result is that the vat man did not have to hold the mold in the air any longer than was required to form the sheet. And so his work was made easier, which could translate into more fun. 2. They had an effortless system, usually pipes or troughs, to move the pulp from the beater to the vat, so there was no strain moving heavy buckets of pulp. Be aware of any strain when you are moving buckets of pulp around. Consider filling them only half full. 3. They had a method to regulate a constant flow of pulp to the vat. This eliminated odd twisting motions required to add pulp by dipping out of a bucket. 4. They had mechanical devices, often called hogs, to stir the vat. I realized I was spending at least 1/3 of my time papermaking just stirring water. If you don't have a hog, when you stir, use both arms to equalize the strain. Be aware of your back. Is it straight? Are your heels on the ground? Are your knees bent? Are you leaning at some odd angle? Some people stir with their decals. This can make things easier. 5. I suggest using a traditional mold and decal. They are designed to be lightweight so that they are less work to lift and hold extended when sheet forming. They are designed to promote water flow so that dipping is more effortless and drainage occurs at the proper rate. If you have a mold and decal that are too thick, your hands will not be able to relax when holding them. If the edges of the decal are not tapered properly, as in a traditional English decal, the pulp will not flow in and out properly and can make sheet forming a chore instead of a joy. Do you have a convenient place to set your mold and decal so that you do not have to twist and get them or set them down before couching? 6. Is the vat at the proper height for you? Your hip bones should be about level with the top of the vat so that you can bend at your waist, resting on the edge of the vat while you dip the mold. Don't curve your back. The vat should not be too deep. The water level should be only a few inches below the top of the vat so that dipping the mold requires as little motion as possible. Do you need hip pads? Do you need hand rinsing buckets mounted to the vat so you don't have to twist your body to rinse the pulp off your arms? You must be able to slide your toes under the vat about 6 inches. Without this toe space, it is hard to keep your heels on the ground when forming the sheets. If you don't keep your heels down, the stress, which should be going into your legs, will go into your back, making it sore at the end of the day. 7. The coucher must be able to grab the mold without overextending. Vat mills had systems for the papermaker to slide the mold to the coucher, so the coucher could grab it by stretching out rather than twisting. If the papermaker does both jobs, he must be able to move easily to the couching bench without tripping. When removing the felts and pressed paper from the post, be aware not to overextend or twist oddly. Instead, move your body so that your feet directly face the couching bench, and then bend from your waist. Is your bench the right height? The felt should be just below the mold when it is held dangling before the couching table. This is usually somewhere between the knee and waist level. You should use the weight of your body instead of your shoulders to couch. Some people use carts that have hydraulic height adjusters. Consider getting one. Consider, is it easy to get the post from the couching bench to the press? 8. The vat mills had rails to slide the post of paper into the press. Never lift too much weight. If necessary, make more smaller posts, or develop ways to slide, roll, or otherwise get the felts into the press without lifting. Is your press easy to work? I recommend big presses, the bigger the better, so that you don't have to strain at the press to get enough pressure. Can you adapt motorized pressure to your hydraulic pump so you don't have to jack it manually? 9. Have you set up your drying system so that you are not required to make odd twists or bends or stretches to load or unload it?
Here's a final review of how to make paper without getting a sore back or repetitive stress injury.
Stay loose. Look for tension and let it go. Don't stand on your toes. When your heels come off the ground, all of the stress is thrown into your back. Bend from the waist. If you curve your back to reach down to couch or wash in a sink, you are stressing your back. Lift carefully, because any time you lift something heavy at a stretch or an odd angle, you can hurt yourself. Don't clutch at the mold. Let it rest in your hand. And especially remember, always keep your knees bent. If you lock your knees when you're sheet forming, all of the tension is going to lock up in your body. And finally, always remember to keep breathing.